musket with a Davidson scope and blowing up supply lines, quick and wily as a Georgia mountain panther. He'd been in his early teens back then, still wet behind the ears, but he'd become a backwoods warrior legend of sorts, as revered and idolized by his fellow Confederates as he was feared and hated by the Bluebellies. Those days were over now, and while he might have still been fleet enough to scamper up the butte ahead of the bushwhackers' bullets and scramble behind a tombstone-sized boulder as another bullet smashed into it with a screeching whine, he had no gun on his hip to reach for. Even if the mule, old Titus, hadn't lit out with the wagon, there was no rifle or shotgun in it. The only knife he had on him was a folding Barlow knife. He could feel the solid lump of the jackknife now in his right pocket of his buckskin trousers. The Barlow felt supremely small and inadequate as another bullet screeched in from the butte on the opposite side of the trail and smacked the face of the boulder. The rifle's hammering wail echoed shrilly. "Law, law," Hunter muttered. "That fella's really out to trim my wick." He jerked his head down as yet another bullet came screeching in and smashed the face of the boulder with another hammering crash. "Hey, you with the rifle!" Hunter shouted. "Why don't you put the long gun down so we can talk this out like grown-ups?" The shooter replied by hurling another bullet against Hunter's rock. Hunter cursed to himself, then shouted, "Is that a definite no or a maybe?" Again, the shooter replied in the only language he cared to communicate in. "All right, then," Hunter said under his breath. "Have it your way." He waited for another bullet to smash against his covering rock, then heaved himself to his feet and dashed straight up the butte. He covered the 15 feet in 3 long strides, crouched forward, keeping his head down, trying to make himself as small as possible. He hurled himself up and over the butte's crest as a slug tore hotly along his right side, tracing the natural furrow between 2 ribs. Hunter hit the butte's opposite slope and rolled halfway to the bottom. When he finally broke his fall, he winced against the burn in his side and lifted his left arm to see the tear in his linsey-woolsey tunic. He jerked up the garment, exposing his washboard belly and slab-like chest, as well as the thin line of blood the bullet had drawn across his side, about halfway between his shoulder and waist. Not a wound, just a graze hardly deep enough to bleed, but it ached like 6 bee stings. "Son of Satan!" Hunter exclaimed. "What in the hell is this fella's problem?" Was he after the mule? The wagon? Possibly the ale Hunter was hauling to town to sell in several Tigerville saloons? His father, Angus Buchanan, was a brewmaster, using old Buchanan family recipes his own father had carried over from Scotland to concoct a dark, creamy ale that was much favored by the miners, prospectors and cowhands in and around this neck of the Black Hills. Something told Hunter the shooter wasn't after any of those things. Just a sense he had. The man seemed so damn determined to kill him that maybe that was all he wanted. Time to find out. He knew a rare but vexing regret that he wasn't armed. He knew he should keep at least a 6-shooter in the wagon. This was wild country after all, populated by men nearly as dangerous as the wildcats and grizzlies that stalked these pine-clad hills, elk parks, and beaver meadows east of the Rockies. But he'd had his fill of guns and knives, of killing during the war. Just looking at a pistol or a rifle, or even a skinning knife conjured bloody memories. After Appomattox, he'd sworn that he would never again raise a gun or a knife against another human being. Not carrying a weapon when he wasn't hunting was his way of trimming his chances of having to break that promise to himself. So far, he'd made good on that promise. So far. Reacting more than thinking about the situation, a trait that had held him in good stead during the war, Hunter heaved himself to his feet and took long, lunging, sliding strides to the bottom of the butte, loosing small landslides in his wake. He followed a crease between buttes back to the west. When he'd figured